Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first IAB Europe Virtual Programmatic Day. We've got a great agenda of speakers lined up for you today, but there are a few little bits of the day I just want to run through. First of all, I do want to say a big thanks to Havas, who have donated us a space to use for the day and some amazing technology. We will have speakers coming in and out of this main room and on the WebEx on the day, so apologies for any background noise. We're going to work to minimise that as much as possible. Just some T's and C's and some controls before we start. Please do familiarise yourself with the WebEx control panel that you've joined. All attendees are automatically on mute, so hopefully you guys can hear me clearly now. If you want to ask a question or give feedback, please use the control panel and chat messages. And either myself or Marie Claire or someone from the IAB will respond. There isn't video in answer to the question. I've just seen pop up. And we're doing our best to manage the audio as much as we can. We also hope that will improve a little bit with more bodies in the room for some of the panels. You can submit questions for the Q&A panels. Please do use the chat panel for that. We are monitoring the chat panel, and we'll try and bring those in alongside some pre-arranged questions. This event has been put together by the IAB Europe Programmatic Training Committee. It's a multi-stakeholder group at which I, as the chair, am really very grateful for all the time that people give to try and help advance and improve the programmatic ecosystem. And this is part of our efforts to improve that understanding and understand the impact on digital advertising. So we're also going to be talking through many of the outputs that we as a committee and a team with the IAB Europe put together. It also is important, before we even start, to thank Alison Senna and Marie Claire who do an amazing job in supporting the committee and getting the work out. So, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to hand you over to Ollie Gertz, who will be moderating this morning's session for us. And Ollie is on the phone, so hopefully he will take over now.
Thank you, and a warm welcome from my side as well. My name is Oliver Gertz, and I'm responsible for driving the digital product for Mediacom across EMEA and working with some of our global clients on programmatic strategy. And I appreciate very much that we have a forum like the IAB Europe, where people from all sides of the industry come together to discuss how we can drive this forward. And therefore, I'm very pleased that I can introduce the first speaker, which is Uli Hegger, Vice President Strategic Development for the DACH region at AppNexus, and he will talk us through the growth of programmatic in Europe, which is a research that the IAB Europe conducted. Uli, over to you.
Thank you, Oliver, for the very kind introduction here, and I'm very excited to have been given the opportunity to actually speak today about pretty good numbers, which we are seeing in accelerated growth all over the programmatic landscape in Europe. So the control works, awesome. So if we have a look at the European programmatic advertising as a whole, all over Europe, we ended up in 2016 with an amount of 8.1 billion euros being transacted programmatically. So pretty impressive growth numbers still, even though we are reaching obviously pretty high numbers by now. The growth keeps outpacing the overall market. So if we have a look at what has happened over the display ad revenue over the last couple of 4 years, while having quadrupled actually in the amount that is being transacted, something interesting has happened in 2016, because for the first time we have seen more than half of the revenue in display ads is actually programmatic. So definitely something we might call a tipping point. So from here on, and of course we expect to see this trend continuing, we can safely say, if we have a look at what's happening, what's coming up in the industry, we will look in retrospect at the year 2016 as one of the most important turning points for our industry, showing the efficiency and the more effective way of doing digital advertising through programmatic has reached the majority of the display ads. Let's have a look at some of the most important numbers and trends in a bit more detail. So two hot topics in market, video and mobile. So if we have a look at the share of programmatic ad spend in video, 17% for now, and 34% mobile compared to desktop programmatic ad spend share in 2016. Very solid performance here, but if we have another look at what kind of growth we're seeing in the regions, it's pretty important to point out that while still, of course, the majority is in Western Europe, Central and Eastern Europe is accelerating and showing a very solid performance here as well. 42% of growth in Central and Eastern Europe compared to Western Europe with, no, sorry, I mixed that up. 53% of growth in Central and Eastern Europe as compared to Western Europe by 42% growth, with 42% growth. So we definitely see a trend there and expect that to accelerate. Coming back to our two topics here, video and mobile. These are very, very impressive numbers if we're looking at what has happened in programmatic online video ad spend. The 55% growth is definitely a very, very strong performance. And if we have a look at the total online video ad spend, 45% of that is by now programmatic. So I predict here at this point that we will see another tipping point, majority of video ads being traded programmatically actually coming up in 2017. Mobile. Programmatic mobile spend shows a very strong performance as well, even though it's with 88% growth, it's not as impressive as the 155 we've just seen. It's, given the importance in market, very encouraging to see that programmatic is being picked up big time in market here. If we have a look at the comparison of the different formats that this actually shows the programmatic share of the different formats. So display, we discussed at the very beginning, still being the major part of the ad spend we're seeing, the digital ad spend we're seeing 50.1%. King of like this group on display mobile video, obviously with almost 2/3 of programmatic share spent on that format is mobile, and video performing very, very strong indeed and accelerating, obviously. So, all right. Here we go. So if we have a look at where we are right now, you might even think about coming up with something like a post-programmatic era. Why that? It's not that hard to predict that at some point in the not-so-distant future, most probably the distinction between programmatic and other ways of dealing, trading, advertising in digital might vanish. So it's just all part of one way of doing the most efficient way of actually delivering ads. There are quite a few challenges ahead certainly to make that happen, but we can certainly state for the moment that we see growth everywhere, over channels, in different formats, and in all the markets, even with smaller markets performing very strongly. Video, very much the new star, and given that so far we always were able to actually overcome any challenges and prove how well this whole system performs, there's definitely obvious room for more growth and optimism. All right, so that was a quick overview of the current market, or the market numbers from 2016. Very excited about the next speakers coming up, diving into more detail, explaining more about the programmatic landscape. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uli. And all participants, what you see in your WebEx is that there is a Q&A button that you can push, and you can ask questions that we then can discuss if time allows. But Uli has been quite quick, and so we are ahead of time. And there is room for questions. And as there are no questions yet, oh, there's actually one in the chat. I would like to pick the brain on programmatic versus direct sales and how they can coexist without cannibalizing one another. I'm from Eastern Europe, and what is still moving slow is kind of hard selling programmatic to the direct sales teams. This is something we will address in the upcoming How to Sell panel, but maybe Uli, because you work with both buy side and sell side, you can share a point of view here as well.
Yeah, happy to chime in, and thank you for the great question. It's actually kind of interesting that there's a steep learning curve to be experienced if it comes to how do direct sales compare to programmatic sales. So what we are typically seeing is first like tentative tries on better understanding what programmatic actually means, and over the course of typically 2 to at most 3 years, it becomes quite obvious where direct sales make most sense, special formats, a very special relationship between media and advertiser, and the rest of it mostly makes sense to take over to programmatic. So I would encourage to try out handing over different formats, different placements, different products, make them programmatic, and see how the numbers differ as compared to direct sales. At the end of the day, it's definitely far more beneficial for the direct sales team to concentrate on like the big fish and the special relationships, because this is where actually exponential and incremental growth can be seen in special relationships. Overall, the move to programmatic will show that you can monetize your inventory better. So that would be my initial take.
Great. And I want to add a view from the buy side, from an agency side. For us, the question whether we transact programmatically or through traditional insertion orders is, as Uli said, is mainly about delivering better results. But we would see that programmatic sales and direct sales should be combined. It's the same relationship between the advertiser, the agency, and the publisher, and we should talk about all methods of buying. In many cases, we believe that it makes more sense to buy programmatically if we overlay our campaigns with data, but sometimes it might be better to buy direct. There is another question: do campaigns that are triggered through DMPs count as programmatic? How do you see this development? Will it be a chance or a threat?
That's an interesting one, because it very much depends on how you actually use the data out of the DMP. So if you use it in a programmatic way. That means that you use the data you have to leverage the campaigns, the campaign booking, and the delivery and optimization of the ad. That certainly counts as programmatic. If you just like use the DMP data, it's a bit more, let me put it this way, static, and use it to actually just optimize IO-based business, this wouldn't exactly be counted as programmatic because it's not being traded in a programmatic way. Hope this answer makes sense. Please get back to me if it doesn't.
Yes, I think in the survey we had a very clear definition of programmatic, as you said, if it's traded through programmatic tools, through DSPs and SSPs. And so the DMP wasn't part of, it doesn't matter whether a DMP fuels that buy or not. There was another question, what do you think video programmatic growth will be this year?
All right, so no crystal ball here, obviously, and none of us have, but based on what all of us, I believe, or most of us are seeing in market, it's pretty safe to say it will experience another year of very strong growth. So what it will be like, I unfortunately would refrain from answering that one. There are far more qualified people than I am actually explorating the given data. Our folks at IHS Markit do a great job. But again, I believe it's a very safe bet to say another very, very strong year.
Yes, I would echo that from a buy side. I think the biggest limitation on video growth is the supply of video. Especially as we have seen some concerns about user-generated content and brand safety related to that. So advertisers are looking for quality video content, and if there was more, then the market would grow faster. And I think that is where a lot of publishers and production companies are working hard to produce more content that generates more views, which will then more or less be guaranteed to be sold.
Right. I believe there's another one that will be very much addressed by David Goddard coming up next. So what are the major issues with programmatic that can affect this exponential growth? And I see another one, it's to all panelists, not in the Q&A. How do you see the programmatic ad tech ecosystem consolidating in the near future? Oh, wow, that's a pretty big one, way beyond actually the scope of my presentation. So, Oliver, do you have any advice on how to answer this or not?
Well, I think both for the buy side and the sell side, we are in very good times right now because there is a lot of innovation happening, and actually we do have a lot of choice. When you look at other parts of the programmatic, of the digital ecosystem, you will often see that there are only one or two partners that are dominating the market, and right now as a vendor, you have multiple sell-side platforms that you can work with, and they are competing hard, which will improve their services and their products. And the same is true for the buy side. So I think that is very good news because it gives us choice and it drives innovation. It obviously has some backdraws as well. It makes it more complicated, and we are still in a fairly immature market when it comes to how easy and soft everything works. So that promise of full automation is still not delivered. It's actually more work, at least for the buy side, to buy programmatically. And obviously what we will see, or what everyone expects, is that there will be some sort of consolidation. But currently I think consolidation is not what everyone should aim for, because this current ecosystem of many competing players and a lot of innovation, I think, is helping us better to drive growth. and to find best solutions. And consolidation usually happens when innovation slows down and it's all about efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in addition, Daniel, I might say that it will become pretty much standard to have a look at the value each member of the delivery process chain is actually adding to the overall value. And I absolutely agree with Oliver. At the same time, I believe that there will be more and more questions around what kind of transparency is needed, what kind of data proves the added value from each and every one that is who's part of this EdTech ecosystem. So, and this won't stifle innovation or anything like that at all, but it will be a very tough and actually good challenge for every player involved to address this and prove its value. So consolidation might happen, but probably in other ways than we actually thought it would be, because there might be undiscovered value in some services we aren't really aware of.
We have one more question, and then I guess we could move over to the next speaker and keep our momentum of being very well on time. But I think this is a question that is not addressed in focus today. How will the GDPR affect the growth of programmatic? And maybe it's something that David can also talk about, but what's your view on this, Uli?
Yes, so GDPR will actually affect the business. It is challenging in quite a few regards. So being able to hand over all the given consent, being able to be as transparent as needed and so on. But all in all, I believe, yes, it might be a bit more difficult than most of us think at this point. So I encourage everyone to have a very, very good look at what kind of business you're in and what might apply to your business here. But GDPR, I believe, can even be beneficial, providing more transparency into the market, giving consumers a better way of understanding what is happening and why that's actually beneficial. So there's another part of legislation being discussed, not at the time of being clear when it will become effective. That's the e-privacy. E-privacy, as it is being discussed right now, is very, very difficult to actually apply to the current landscape we're having, and which has proven to be beneficial for actually most of the players out there. So this is being heavily discussed. I don't know if it will actually make its way into becoming effective as it is right now. If it would be, that would definitely pose very big challenges. I'm not going into the details, but please feel free to read up tons of information on the internet, and IAB Europe is actually very active in taking part in the discussions here. So this would actually be a big obstacle for further growth. GDPR, I believe this is what we can be kind of certain of what's being required. This is something the market can deal with. So that's my take.
Yes, and I want to stress that IAB Europe is very active in that space, both on educating and lobbying politicians, but also in educating us, the industry, on what all this means. So go to the IAB Europe website. You will find a lot of very useful and very practical, I think, documents. But also, if you are engaged in your local market through your local IAB. I think this is an area, especially when it comes to the e-privacy directive, which is not agreed yet, that we need the voice of the European markets, we need the voice of the European publishers and agencies and advertisers to prevent something that coming into place that would actually do quite some harm to this multi-country local ecosystem we have, and might play into the hands of a few global players that have a direct relationship with consumers and essentially can force consumers to accept nearly everything they want them to accept. And I'm really happy that we're getting so many questions, because that was one of the discussions we had before, how interactive can a session be if not everyone is in the same room. And I think, thank you very much, participants, for asking really good questions. And thank you very much, Uli, for walking us through those numbers from the IAB research, but also sharing your view on the market development. And I would like now to invite David Goddard, who is Global Head of Programmatic Trading for the BBC Worldwide, to talk us through another research that the IAB Europe did, the attitude to programmatic advertising. Guys, you have a massive background noise, and we don't hear you.
Can you hear me now, Oliver?
Yes, I can. But there still is a lot of background noise.
Is there? Right, we'll try and keep the background noise down to a minimum.
It's better now.
It might be the air conditioning in the room. It's quite echoey. Stop me if you're having trouble hearing me, please. And we'll try and fix it.
I think the sound is good now, so hand over to David.
Thank you very much, Oliver. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining the webinar. So my name is David Goddard, and as Oliver said, I'm the Global Head of Programmatic Trading at BBC Advertising, a division of BBC Worldwide. The BBC Worldwide is a commercial arm of the BBC, and BBC Advertising monetizes the digital portfolio of BBC outside the UK, returning value back to the BBC. And I've worked in programmatic field for nearly 8 years. The majority of that time has been spent with supply and demand partners in Europe. So I'm really delighted to be presenting this sneak peek into the latest attitude towards programmatic research. This survey received an incredible 700 respondents between June and August this year, and the responses came from advertisers, agencies and publishers in 31 markets, and respondents with both pan-European and global remits. So it's a really true representation of the attitude of our European industry at the moment. This snapshot of the report will give a view of how the industry attitude towards programmatic has changed since 2016, and the challenges that have been addressed and thus dropped in concern, and those that are very much front of mind in the advertiser, agency and publisher world. Just to let you know that this report will be released in 2 weeks and available to all via the IAB Europe website, so please download it after this, because these aren't all the results. Again, this is just a snapshot. So, on to the first slide. 71% of advertisers and 76% of agencies cite targeting efficiencies as a key driver, thus the reason to invest in programmatic. And in this instance, efficiency does not mean getting access to inventory at a lower cost, which will please a number of publishers out there, I'm sure. Actually, lowering the cost of media as a driver entering into programmatic has significantly reduced as the driver amongst most advertisers and agencies. Highlighting this was advertisers in 2016 cited getting access to lower cost of media as being a key driver entering into programmatic were 53%, and that dropped to 22% this year. Agencies dropped from 41% as well to 28% this year. So if efficiencies are being more than just reduced CPMs, what are they? Well, we've seen an increase in the use of first and second party data in automated guarantees, which has dramatically risen this year. bringing greater efficiency to brand activity, which is one area that has grown in programmatic. The growth of automated guarantee has enabled publishers, agencies, and advertisers to avoid issues such as the rise in billing, reconciliation, creative delivery challenges, which can plague direct reservations. And this has all led to a greater increase in efficiency, thus the uplift. We saw that programmatic video ad investment increased by 155% in the previous presentation. Unsurprisingly then, 49% of advertisers cite being able to engage with their audiences via programmatic video as a key driver to further investment. Still, challenges arise around publishers, and I'm one that I can speak quite closely to this. Outside of the main video portfolios, publishers are struggling to deliver the supply to match the dramatically increase in demand. And as video demand outstrips supply, this potentially gives rise to non-lean, that's light encrypted, ad choice enabled and non-intrusive ad executions to deliver video ads outside of standard pre-roll. Buyers and sellers should be mindful of the impact on user experience and customer experience when making ad selections for their digital portfolio, as when trying to deliver video executions. Poorly done, this can have a negative effect on attempts to eradicate things such as ad blocking or even engage users without harming their user experience online, thus preventing potential positive brand. The BBC, so I'm speaking from here myself, has adhered to the lean principle. This is the IAB's light encrypted ad choice enabled and non-intrusive ad formats, and replaced non-lean ad formats with lean to improve user experience and enable advertisers to engage better with our global audience, thus trying to reduce potential ad blocking issues. Further information on lean and ad blocking can be found on IAB Europe's website. So, this is client demand is key to publisher adoption, and 71% of publishers are investing in programmatic due to client demand, and half are hoping to gain competitor advantage, which is quite interesting at the moment. So, the half of publishers cited the competitor advantage was key to their decision making. Publishers at the moment can really only gain competitor advantage by moving into programmatic in maturing markets at the moment, not necessarily those more advanced markets such as Germany, Netherlands, France, UK, etc. I feel that the next stage of programmatic adoption is to put programmatic campaigns into competition with direct reservation, and by doing this, programmatic is no longer becomes a channel, but a mechanism of just trading digital. This kind of answers one of the questions after the first presentation. Thus the norm, which in turn will reduce the chance of gaining a competitive advantage by moving into programmatic, by shifting into this form of trading, because it will be the norm. There have been numerous attempts by many publishers actually have been made this year to unify the auction through things such as enhanced dynamic application, header bidding, and more recently server-to-server solutions. And these are likely to grow. Now on to a couple of big highlights this year. I want to touch on brand safety first, and as you can see here, brand safety and ad fraud has increased in importance. Interesting, advertiser in 2016 stated that 30% of them this was important to, it's jumped to 37%. Agencies moved from 40% in 2016 to 44%, and the biggest jump was actually seen by publishers. From 2016 it was 23%, and this year is 33%. And this is because brand safety issues could be hitting publishers in their pockets if they aren't ensuring that they are a brand safe environment. And brand safety can be both objective and subjective for advertisers and agencies. We do have some clear guidelines around brand safety where there are core subjects which is non-brand safe, but some others around maybe politics or a certain other competitor is non-brand safe for them, meaning that's more subjective. The one thing I can say is the level of trust and comfort needs to be dramatically increased to eradicate this potential bottleneck. And I feel the buy side and sell side need to have open dialogue without third parties involved to solve this. This means publishers and clients or agencies sit down and discuss the challenge they both face. The output could benefit the industry. Third-party tools are not the only answer at the moment. I'd say news has been a focus for brand safety, and I'm speaking from experience here, especially with the current news cycles that are going on at the moment. And we and many other news publishers I know have opted not to rely on tech vendors to decide how and what is brand safe on our own side, but take matters into our own hands and eradicate the ad from around censored content before it enters the ecosystem. And I hope other publishers or portals will take this lead as well, because that will severely drop the brand safety concerns that we have. Now on to the topic of fraud. Fraud has dramatically increased across the board here, to a slight drop in agencies. So advertisers went up from 26% to 46% in this year. Agencies moved from 45% in 2016 down to 40%, but still it's a significant portion. And publishers went up from 25% to 33%. 40% of advertisers cite transparency of fees also as a key barrier to programmatic investment as well, which is something that should be very looked at, and we can address that slightly later on around the value chain. I think I'll bring it up in a couple of slides' time. The interesting thing on fraud is recent focuses and outputs from IAB Tech Lab has produced the launch of ads.txt, which I know many publishers, or ads.txt, many publishers are integrating into their sites. And this is an initiative that's been rolled out across the globe, especially with key European publishers taking the lead on that. And now DSPs are pushing buyers, or also maybe enforcing buyers to buy verified traffic through ads.txt. This fantastic initiative could have a positive impact on the concerns around ad fraud, and I'm hoping if it does, we'll see a drop in 2018's results here. Viewability is now less of a barrier, suggesting more viewable ad formats are being made available, and education around viewability has increased. Advertisers have dropped from 30% to 14%, which is fantastic to see. Agencies have dropped 37% to 30%, still quite high, but I know a number of agencies are demanding very high viewability standards from publishers, and publishers have dropped just slightly from 25 to 22. And I know many other global publishers and pan-European publishers and local publishers are integrating with verification tools to monitor their own viewability at the moment and to increase or improve their products to deliver high viewability. Hopefully we'll see a continued drop on this. So, the costs are also a concern. The cost of data and technology are a concern. Half of publishers cite cost of technology as a barrier to programmatic investment, which is quite interesting. But the cost of data has risen from advertisers, went up from 19% to 26% this year. Agencies actually dropped a little from 23 to 20, and publishers stayed around 20%, moving from 18 to 20% this year. Interestingly, actually, I wanted to address the drop in agency side because we, within the market, have seen a significant movement towards the utilisation of third and second party data, which may have caused a reduction of agencies utilising third party data. The shift into these data partnerships has enabled a more cost-effective but a trusted form of data potentially for agencies, and the rise of automated guarantees with audience has happened. If you've got any questions around, or you want to learn a little bit more around what first-party, second-party and third-party data is and how to use it whether you're an advertiser or an agency, you can reference or you can go to IAB Europe and have a look at using data effectively, which is in programmatic. It's the white paper we produced last year. Please be aware that with GDPR around the corner, this This may change in the future, and I'm sure we'll look to highlight those changes via IAB Europe. But one thing we can say, there are lots of concerns around trust with data, and actually GDPR as a regulation, external regulation coming onto our industry could enable more transparency and trust around data as well. As I said, the cost of technology is a concern for many. Advertisers have gone up from 2016, 20% to 42% this year. Agencies have dropped a little from 35 to 29%, but publishers have gone up from 37% to 48%. So almost half of publishers cite that technology is a barrier to programmatic investment. So the agency reduction cost could be down to them bringing more control in-house with trading desks or trading specialists moving within the agencies. But programmatic has led to a greater use of technology overall, such as many people to work in programmatic require the utilisation of demand-side platforms, DMPs, verification tools, and also publishers utilise sell-side platforms and their own verification tools to deliver more intuitive and effective marketing. This increase in third-party vendors that deliver these solutions would have contributed to the reduction of media spend ending up on the publisher, where the ad is actually seen by the user. This could have led or could have been a significant contributor to publishers questioning the value chain and thus highlighting this concern. Advertisers are realising the impacts of programmatic trading beyond cost efficiencies, as we highlighted earlier on. For example, faster campaign setup and better campaign reporting are now cited as key business impacts by advertisers, and that's significantly grown. Highlighted here are the pure efficiencies witnessed by programmatic and key to its success. As I'm sure as the investment within automated guaranteed, as we see direct reservation budget moving over to here, will significantly increase next year's numbers and the attitude towards programmatic. Only time will tell. And in-house strategies are increasing amongst all stakeholders. Advertisers have shifted from 16% to 23% this year. Agencies moved from 48% to 54%, and publishers moved from 40% to 44%. Actually, the number of advertisers outsourcing to an agency is also decreasing. 2016, 63% were outsourcing, and it's dropped to 46% in 2017's results. 46% of advertisers don't already have an in-house programmatic strategy and are planning to develop one in the next 12 months. But that's compared to 76% of agencies and 56% of publishers. The drivers to taking programmatic in-house are related to increasing control of data and operations and better monetization of inventory or better delivery of campaigns. Control is key, and I'm sure we'll see this only grow over the coming years as programmatic becomes a mechanism to deliver digital and other media campaigns, thus the norm. If you've got any questions around should I take this in-house, IAB Europe has a couple of very good tools. Have a look at key considerations for the buy-side or sell-side infographics that can be found on the IAB Europe. And also we have the IAB Europe Virtual Programmatic white paper as well, which will really help with those. But it's key to asking yourself the right questions. All in all, the vast majority in EMEA or Europe state that programmatic is set to grow with their backing. And I'm excited to see next year's results from the attitude towards programmatic to see the difference. And thank you for the time. I'm pleased to share I'm really pleased to share these kind of initial results. And the 2017 edition of Attitude Towards Programmatic will be released in 2 weeks. So keep your eye on IAB Europe and download it. Because as I said, this is just a snapshot of the results. There's far more data available to you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David, for those interesting numbers and your view on those. I guess you guys have to... there's one question. How can publishers gain competitive programmatic solutions?
Can we bring the question up on the screen? Oliver, you broke up a little bit there. I'll read it out yet again.
It is in the Q&A panel, and the question is, how can publishers gain competitive advantage through programmatic? Is it programmatic guarantee?
As I said earlier on in the slide, programmatic is becoming the norm of trading, or just a mechanism of trading digital inventory. So for publishers out there, I'd look at your product, see how you're enabling buyers to engage with your audience and the opportunity there. I think competitive advantage doesn't necessarily come through the programmatic pipes, but the product that you're offering to the advertisers. And if you get that right and then enable it to be bought through direct reservation or programmatic, that'll give you that kind of competitive advantage. Because I believe that programmatic, again, is just one mechanism. And automated guarantees will enable you to deliver, if set up properly, will enable you to deliver exactly what you were doing through direct reservations, but without the pains of things such as reconciliation, creative delivery, billing issues, or even the insertion orders as well, because it's all done through programmatic buying. So I'd say look at your product first and foremost, ensure that you're delivering something that buyers want, and what's your story to the advertiser as well, because just saying we're available programmatically will not give you competitor advantage.
I think it's Simon Houston from I'd echo that it's also about replicating your offers so that the pathways are just the same. It doesn't matter, right? It's about which buying mechanic suits the advertiser or agency, and actually having a consistency of offer is probably the best route to market.
Absolutely. Well put, Simon. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thanks a lot, David. And as you've said, the document will be published on the IAB Europe. And now we have Director Global Program Teats, and he will address what David already mentioned, and that is the discussion about transparency in programmatic. So over to Ryan.
Great. Thanks, Oliver. Good stuff, Sipper speaking. Great. Well, thanks again for having me in the virtual programmatic day. As I said, I'm working with Teats, which is the largest global video marketplace in the world, and this is a big focus for us, so it's a really timely discussion, and happy to be talking about transparency today. So the IAB Transparency Working Group was formed earlier this year in response to advertisers' demands for swift transformational change and transparency. It's quoted here by P&G's Chief Brand Officer, as most of us will know, Mark Pritchard. We need better advertising to drive growth, enabled by media transparency to drive a clean and productive media supply chain. So it's exactly what we're talking about today. It's amazing how many supply sources continue to be guarded about the inventory they have, the performance, and the cost of that inventory. The market is catching up and demanding more from all aspects of the digital advertising funnel, particularly the supply sources. We talk more in the coming slides about the latest initiatives that are pushing massive change and immediate change. The truth is, 40% of advertisers are actually steering away from programmatic due to a lack of transparency. In lieu of that, the IAB has published the Transparency Guide. This is a snapshot of that right here. The aim here is to improve transparency in the digital advertising chain, focusing on data, cost, and inventory sources. Basically, this started about 5 or 6 months ago, where a group of us got together, sitting in a room, and listing out tons of different questions. So from various parts of the supply chain, we listed as many questions as we possibly could, Some overlap each other in the various groups, but there are a massive list of questions. So from there, we started to form this web. We realized pretty quickly that a whiteboard was not going to be enough space for that, and it was going to be a pretty complex web. So as I said, we focused on 5 key areas, or stakeholders. That being the buyers, which relates really to the advertisers and agencies, demand-side platforms, so the DSPs, supply-side platforms and exchanges, ad networks, and then the sellers, which is anyone who's really owning that digital media. So it could be an individual publisher or a group of publishers. We soon started discussing the links to data management platforms, DMPs, as well as standard data providers and vendors, where we found a lot of links to these, and we wanted to formulate a group of questions that each one of these groups would ask each other to open up transparency. So as I said, the guide provides questions for each stakeholder category to be asked at different stages of the supply chain. So the web that we showed before breaks down into these various stakeholders. So the snapshot here is showing the buyer angle, which I've been working on more closely, surveying a lot of our advertisers and agencies globally to see what questions they have around the cost and fees to an SSP and also to an individual inventory source. And a lot of that ties back to data and a lot about what we just discussed in the previous conversation around transparency on viewability, fraud, and brand safety. The initial pivot allows each stakeholder to dive deeper into each one of these sections. So as you're looking here, you can click into data, cost and fees, or inventory source. And this is aimed to be wherever you sit on that supply chain, you can dive deeper into each one of those. So for example, for data, we listed out questions that advertiser and agency would ask a DMP or data provider or buyer to the sell side and supply. For cost, we take a deeper look at the buyer to a DMP or buyer to DSP and what fees they are charged for and how transparent they are. So this could be down to the individual auction. If it is a dynamic sort of second price auction, is that clearing price the final price they're paying, or does it go beyond that? And then lastly, the inventory source section. We dig into what questions buyer may ask their DSP in terms of how they are transacting on the supply. They also dive into video-specific questions, as we found that some of the video questions regarding inventory were different from display. So this is the final aspect and drill down that can be done. So I listed a few of the questions that we asked, but this is really what the crux of it. So once you dive down into these individual sections, we drew out the web and seeing how all of these different components are interconnected. So from the advertisers and agencies to a data management platform, or the buyers directly to a data vendor, or the buyers directly to the sellers and that connection. And our goal was to list out and be as exhaustive as possible for each of these sections. Focused a lot on data as it's going to continue to improve in importance. It's going to grow as each link is held accountable for GDPR and e-privacy laws next year in May, and in terms of what's actually being charged for the use of data. I think this is one of the biggest shortcomings in programmatic right now is data is growing and being appended on various links in the supply chain, but it's not so clear as to who's charging for the data, when it's being charged, and how much. Not shown here are other examples of how the web breaks down. We'll break down into similar sections like this across each one of the stakeholders. So we don't have time today to go through each one of these, but know that the web can be broken down very similar to how we just did these 3 slides in order for each section and stakeholder. Just to go through a couple of quick examples, say you're an SSP. You may ask a data provider, how do I prevent malware? Or how do I protect against audience profiling by third parties? These are going to be huge coming out in Europe in May and are very important now. We can also approach this from a DSP angle, and you might ask an SSP, do you give loss notifications? Or is the clearing price inclusive of all the different costs that we may incur? Because often that's not the case, and it's not very clear to the end buyer what those actual costs and fees are. So our goal is to make everyone start asking the right questions so we can have a more transparent workplace in programmatic. On the back of the Mark Pritchard quote at the beginning of the deck, Teads and others in the market are promoting clean advertising, which ties very well with this concept of transparency. And it focuses on 4 really key pillars. The user experience, that it's a clean user experience, that there is no fraud. So we touched on this in the last conversation as well, but reducing that fraud, which in programmatic stands typically around an average of 9%, which is very, very high. Increasing brand performance, brand safety rather, on the supply side as well as DSP side. So many DSPs are rolling out initiatives and products for brand safety. We believe really that a lot more control has to be done on the supply side and being held accountable for brand safety with the millions of programmatic campaigns live at any given time. And a focus on no reselling. So we'll touch a little bit more on ads.text and how that's coming out from the IAB and how it's driving quick change both on the DSP side, but mainly on the SSP exchange and publisher side. One last thing too, we're planning at Teads to do a survey with brands now to find out how important this topic actually is in terms of clean advertising and transparency. Our goal is to actually reach out to individual advertisers in order to get feedback on if this really is an impact for them. We expect that it will, but want to find out which parts are lacking in transparency now. So why does all this clean advertising and transparency matter? We hope that the advertising ecosystem will continue to grow in size, but also in quality. When we look at quality and premium inventory that is transparent and fraud-free, we see better performance across completion rates, viewability, and massive reductions in fraud. Those that are engaging with groups like Double Verify and other fraud protection are seeing fraud at 2% or less, which is a drastic improvement from where the norm was a couple of months ago. And striving for quality inventory is giving better performance to the end advertiser who's keying in on completion rates, which has been a long conversation, but more so on viewability, where we're focused on, at least on the video front, for 50% of the ad and view for 2 seconds, and on display, 50% of the ad and view for at least 1 second. And this is for me, on every one of our advertisers, a key KPI. It's hardly a question to be asked on the media plan. It really is just a key aspect and expected on that advertising spend. And this performance is key to the end advertiser because it is increasing their brand awareness as well. Simply by the fact that your ads are being seen and seen well, the message is understood. We're seeing a 50% increase in ad awareness and a 44% increase in message association with the product when ads are viewable and they are under premium inventory that is fraud-free. Seen, ingested, and remembered is what we're key on. We'll talk too much more on the viewability as we discussed it 2 slides ago, but every second does matter. It's moving away just from the video front, but really into the display. Visible placement is key when engaging, when 26% of the ads are only viewed for 1 second or less. So that 1 second is key, and being actually completely in view is essential to the success of that campaign. Finding that only 4% of ads are in view for more than 2 seconds, which really disrupts that sort of ad call and recall of the message. For high-impact viewable display, ads that only display first when in view have an average dwell time of 9 seconds, which is a massive increase from that 2-second average globally. closing off a little bit on ads.text and why this is one of the biggest movements in terms of transparency that we've seen. We're now seeing 12.8 of the top Alexa 10K websites have adopted ads.text. And this really has only been pushed over the last 2 months. So that's a really large percentage, and I expect that to increase before the end of the year. Now over 3,000 domains have an ads.text file, and this is listed within those ads.text files. There's over 137 ad tech partners. This goes to show how many ad tech partners are out there, but that there really are a lot of ad tech vendors that have the rights to sell the supply and inventory, and we want to make sure that that's known. But there's a much larger number than 137 that are out there. This is really helping us to get that transparency on who is able to sell that inventory, who should be, and moves us one step closer in terms of reducing fraud. On that front, the DSPs are coming out very strong for this, which is pushing on the SSPs as well. So DBM initially hoped by November 1 they were going to stop stop allowing advertisers who use their platform to buy on any third-party supply that wasn't on an ad.text file, as long as an ad.text file existed. This was pushed back slightly, but they're still expecting to move forward with this in November, and seeing how big of an impact that would have as DBM runs tons of programmatic activity. This could really restrict the buying on the supply side, but also forces the SSPs to become more engaged with this initiative, make sure that they're on those ads.text files if they should be. And if they shouldn't, they'll gear away from it and we'll move in the direction that we're hoping for. MediaMath, AppNexus, and DataZoo are also pushing for this and being a little less aggressive on that front, but DBM is really driving that home. So for me, that pretty much lists off what I wanted to cover on our transparency working group. We definitely encourage you to go and take a look at the web, dive through each aspect of that, even if it doesn't pertain to you. We find that most of these key components and stakeholders are intertwined very closely. So there could be a question that you find you're not asking that you should be at your section. So thank you.
Would you not agree that transparency within programmatic delivery is held by the DSPs above all other operators within the ecosystem? So it is mainly the DSPs that have to drive transparency?
So let me just read the question was around whether or not this is all held by the DSP or above all other operators within the ecosystem. So the DSP is running a lot of, it has control over a lot of the transparency, but it's not only the DSPs, I guess, today that have that buying power on supply. I think a lot of the exchanges, even some of the publishers are building buying platforms for advertisers to place their spend, and they choose and have the power over how transparent they want to be through those buying platforms. Definitely would agree that the DSP has the ability to either sort of block or disclose the bulk of this information, but I think it comes down to mainly the DSP, how much the supply partner is sharing, even down to whether they're being transparent with their URLs and pushing for an ads.text file, and then soon the SSPs who are building out buying platforms and do have control of how much information they're passing back on the publishers and how compliant they are with the GDPR regulations early next year.
Excuse me. I'd probably just add, DSPs as a buyer would obviously have a significant stake in that management of transparency, but actually it's an everyone responsibility and it's an industry responsibility. We all have to make steps to be as clean and transparent as we can be and make decisions that support that in both how we engineer platforms, in how as publishers we list inventory, in terms of buyers, what we expect for inventory and how we pay. Some of the idea behind that work is to enable people to ask good questions and to make conscious decisions, because everyone's view of where the right line will be on transparency of supply will vary, or not just transparency of supply or transparency of whatever they need. Those are individual decisions between companies. Hopefully the work we see will help, that we've seen from Ryan today, from the Transparency Working Group, helps people in the ecosystem understand the questions they ask and make conscious decisions about the routes they go down. There never is a one-size-fits-all in a multi-party ecosystem, so I think it's a big shared responsibility. I think there's another question in terms of, do you think ads.text will bring transparency? And significantly, without a doubt.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think in some points it's I think in the initial front there may be some frustration because buyers are going to be a little bit restricted in terms of the sites that they can deliver on. So I think even some people who are asking for this may come out against it and say, okay, well now I can't scale like I was before. But this is absolutely a step in the right direction that's necessary for transparency, and at least on my end, big advocate for it.
Do you have any other?
Back to you, Ollie.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Ryan. So, in summary, transparency comes from asking the right questions, and I think that's where the document can help you to find the question to ask. I get a horrible echo, so we have to sort this out over the break. We now have a 10-minute break.
Hi everybody, I hope everyone is back on the line. We've tried a couple of experiments with audio and we think this is as good as we're going to get, so apologies for that. We are going to try and speak a bit softer in the room and see if that actually improves some of the echoing that we see. So just give us feedback as we go. So we're moving into the second half of the morning. I'm really, really excited about the quality of panel we've got on to have a discussion about how to buy programmatically. So before we start, we've tried to have people from all sides of the process, from supply, technology, agency and advertiser join the panel. But I'm going to ask the guys to introduce themselves and then we'll move into some questions. So, starting with Emmanuel.
Thank you. So I'm Emmanuel Ogiden. I'm the Commercial Director for Freewill across the UK and Ireland. Some of you may know Freewill essentially are an SSP and ad server primarily for broadcasters.
Great. Dave Reed, Managing Director of Europe, Middle East, Africa at MediaMath. We're a digital data management and media execution platform.
Hi everyone, I'm Pavlina. I'm a digital media and the lead of programmatic and trading in UK for Nestle and also in Ireland.
And then I'm going to introduce Ollie myself because at the moment we're keeping him on mute to try and manage some of that disruption, but we'll be releasing him to talk very, very soon. For those of you, so Ollie is Managing Director, Interaction EMEA for MediaCom. For those of you that haven't heard me already today, I chair the Programmatic Trading Committee for the IAB that have put today together. I also work at Oath, but I'm here only as a moderator today and will try and not offer any opinions. It's very, very hard for me. So I think we want to start with some really straightforward and simple topics, and we're going to first of all ask Pavlina, just in a generic way, not specific to her business, what are the key considerations and benefits for an advertiser about buying programmatically, and what drives you to explore buying programmatically?
So from an advertiser perspective, when the advertiser is thinking of joining into the programmatic world, well, they have actually two consider is what role the programmatic will play within their media buying and the media mix that they have, but also what available opportunities they have and what they need to think and need to improve. So the first thing is understand when it comes down to the data, do I have the right data? Am I collecting the right data? What sort of integrations and tech patterns do I need to think of in order to start getting the right data, understanding it, and using the right information in order then to reach the people for programmatic buying. But then an advertiser has to think the different models around the programmatic buying, the different tech partners that will help them to drive that scale and the relevancy that wants through the media buying. So it's really important to think all the key elements, starting from the data, so going to the activation part, to the different DSPs, moving to the SSP and the other things that have to work and understand the models behind it. And also, the most important of it is measurement. Programmatic is all about control, but if we don't have the right way of measuring it and thinking of the key driver of it, then it's not going to be so beneficial for the overall outcome.
And I think we're going to ask a similar question to Ollie in a sec, so be prepared for an unmute. I think when we speak to the agency, what are the key considerations that you guys think about before you start even buying programmatically? Particularly around how do you plan strategy in a programmatic world? So, Marie, can we unmute Ollie and mute ourselves?
Hello. So I think the main benefit that we can drive for our clients buying programmatically is taking more control. In programmatic, it's not a new media channel, it's a new way of buying media. And rather than buying packaged media packages that publishers are offering, we can cherry pick impressions and users to reach the right person at the right time. And that is not only allowing us to reach our audience better, combining the first-party data the client has with data that the publisher has and data that we get from third parties or second parties, but it also allows us to do just tactical media optimization better, so managing frequency, managing the right time of day, day of week, geographic, etc. And that allows us to have just more control to generate better insights and better optimization, which ultimately leads to better results. And when you ask about how do we plan, I think it's very important to recognize that as programmatic is not a new media channel, the fundamentals of media planning don't change. It's just how we execute them. So it still has to start with setting KPIs and really defining which targets do we want to reach. And this is important because some of the execution is outsourced to a machine, and that machine needs very clear instructions what it should achieve. We then define our audience, and that's where the biggest change happens because we can now define our audience much more granular. We have to define our tactics, and there are some opportunities, some new ways of delivering campaigns that were not possible before. We have to select our media and the media partners, and here the same questions that we asked before are relevant. So reach versus quality, price versus control. How can we work closely with publishers that produce great content and engage great audiences, and how can we work directly with them? One thing, and I think that's the area where we are still at the beginning, is how can we then customize the message? And then in the last question, when it comes to campaign execution, as we have so much more data and we can react so much faster, we have to plan ahead what are the insights we want to generate, which are the tests that we want to conduct, A/B testing. So there's much more value creation and work in a programmatic campaign after you push the launch button than in an I/O buy, where most of the work is done in the planning phase, and then during the campaign we can't really change that much.
Thanks, Ollie. Hopefully the switch between mics is working okay. I actually sort of want to ask the same question to Dave now in terms of, Media Map, super strong DSP, right? Great reputation in market. What are your key considerations when you're trying to activate a customer for the first time on how to buy?
Yeah, so I would definitely agree with everything Hudson and Oliver said. Maybe a couple things to add on to that. I think maybe stepping back from the consumer standpoint, we've moved from a world maybe 30 years ago where you had tens to hundreds of exposures to advertisements per day as a consumer, to a world where media math, we see 5 billion consumers about 300 to 400 times per day. So literally you could hit whole countries thousands of times. And so I think when you think about that proliferation of digital consumption, then the real challenge for brands and agencies is to figure out how to cut through that and to get to the end consumer. So I think correctly, Oliver pointed out, this isn't a new media channel. It's a way to manage your media exposure. And when you have thousands of opportunities and decisions to make, maybe per consumer per day, that becomes something that no human could kind of individually do. And I think rooting that in the KPI you're trying to drive is probably into that feedback loop, which I'd be really interested to hear how Natalie thinks about this, because it's fascinating to me the sophistication with which agencies and brands now are addressing that feedback loop. I think is one of the next great frontiers. So if you're FMCG that fundamentally has a disintermediated feedback loop from your distribution channel and consumer touch, those things look really interesting. A whole challenge there versus retailers, which may have been able to move in a little bit earlier because there's kind of a quicker feedback loop. But then as Oliver points out, even with that quicker feedback loop, you get more data, you have to do something with it. So I think when we talk to clients, if it's a brand direct, there's really a sort of programmatic readiness sort of construct that we take them through. Even if you contract with a technology like ours directly, you need to figure out all of your service partners and the agencies, because many brands aren't ready to sort of have all that inside. Then the second thing, really importantly, is what are you trying to achieve? What isn't working today? What do you expect? And what's the measurement? So in a year hence, you've made this investment in a DMP or DSP or whatever other technology. What are the things that you're going to say, yeah, that was great, and we're going to double down on that investment? And what are the things that say, yeah, that was a failure? I think real basics like that are essential. And often, I think now there's a recognition of that quality of sort of just simplicity and insight at the outset can be really valuable in kind of ensuring success.
I think it's a great point made by each of you so far, and actually it's an opportunity to ask it to Emmanuel as well. But I was a media buyer many, many years ago, and I was dreadful. So I have no recommendation of how to buy. But the basics of planning and buying don't change. It's an execution channel. And I think what we're hearing very clearly from each of the panelists so far is that need to plan before you activate and set up, and have a clear list of constraints or goals around what your outcome will be, and also where you want to buy. And so that moves into an interesting question around how do we select partners. So I guess to everyone, I'm going to go to Emmanuel first. How as a seller in this conversation, how do you help people identify what to buy?
Okay, yeah, good question. And I'd go as far as saying, I agree with everything everyone said so far. I think from a buyer standpoint or a media buying standpoint, it's imperative that post-campaign analysis is conducted, as you've rightly said, because that gives us, the opportunity to basically analyze the data in order to create, subsequent strategies around what has worked well. I think from a supply standpoint, one of the key things that we try to do is always promote new opportunities to buyers based around publishers that have worked well for the buyer. And I think, we'll probably get onto this, but, key areas with regards to mobile or just TV do play their part within that media planning phase. And once we've obtained some understanding in terms of what works, the next stage for us from a supply standpoint is how can we potentially help publishers upsell the imagery they represent in order to synergize those same audiences with the advertiser in order for them to make these campaigns ROI effective.
Absolutely. And I think, again, we heard in even some of the earlier comments from David around, for those that were on at that point, around the need for the advertiser and agency and the publisher to still be talking, and the technology in the middle is an enabler that supports that. I don't know if either of you guys have anything to add to what Emmanuel said, or if we need to unmute Ollie, which will be
Maybe just to strengthen what you said, I think the trend, we're past the buy long tail cheap against really, sort of highly modeled data. There is a world now where I think all these things are merging together, and there's some interesting secular trends, as Manuel probably live within. The ITVs and the Channel 4 is getting closer to being tech players, RTL in Germany buying SpotX. These worlds are starting to merge in a way that I think is positive because it's a flight to quality where, maybe Mark Pritchard had a quote of the year where P&G is not going to invest in the crowd. But that's kind of what everybody's feeling, right? I mean, I would imagine you're feeling the same thing internationally.
It comes from the advertiser needs, because from an advertiser perspective, when we have to reach out to the partners we're selecting, it's down to what we need to deliver as a business, what are the needs, but also the challenges that we are facing, where the industry is. So it's always down to what we want to achieve and how advanced the partner is, but also how the partner can provide us the right inventory of the right data and the right measurement in order to be able to see the ROI back to the business and to have that standpoint in order to see the business of the programmatic buying.
Yeah, and I think Ollie will ping me if he wants to come in. So let's open the mic to Ollie and see if he's got anything to add for a second.
Yes, I think as Dave said, it used to be programmatic started as a tactic to buy low-cost inventory and get rid of low-cost inventory for performance outcomes. But what I see, and I think it's no coincidence that Nestle is on this panel, is that especially big brands that are selling through retailers and don't have a direct relationship with the consumer, are most excited about the promise, because programmatic can be one-to-one communication or one-to-one dialogue at scale, and that allows a brand to get much closer to the consumer. And then the feedback loop is really important, because then for the first time we can really see how do consumers react to our messages. We have seen that in search and in social, but now we can also see it in display and video and native, and really use that as a strong insights channel. And therefore also the requirements towards our partners on the technology side, but also on the media side, has changed, because it's now much more than giving us access to media inventory or data. It's also giving us access to tools that help us to unearth those insights and act on them and manage those relationships at scale.
Just doing a quick dance with mics again. And so I think that leads into a really interesting area of questions. How do we all select partners in this space? And so again, I'll start from the top of the funnel with Pavlina. How do you guys go about selecting technologies and publishers you work with? And then we'll pass all the way through the line to Emmanuel, even how Emmanuel makes decisions about how Free will partner with publishers and the decisions they make there. So over to you, Pavlina.
So from an advertiser perspective, when it comes to technology solutions and the choices that we have to make, is first of all we have to think what the brand and what the business wants to achieve, but of course always the business wants to see their ROI. So it's important for us to find that cost-efficient tech partner, but also that we will have the ability to have the right control and the right scale. So it's down to briefing the partners with the needs, with the capabilities that we have, and what actually can the publisher and the tech partner bring back to us. And also we have to bear in mind all the hot trends outside of the industry those days around usability, brand safety, data, and to make sure that the partner is going to actually tick all these requirements in order for us to be accountable back to the business and of course back to the customers that we want to reach by using the programmatic pipelines.
Great, thank you for that. We'll pass over to Ollie to give us the agency perspective. Marie, sorry.
Yeah, so when we think about media partners, then we want the best of both worlds. We want the direct relationship with publishers that have good content and good users and negotiate the prices with them. but we then want to execute those deals in real time on an impression-by-impression basis programmatically. So I think that relationship hasn't changed, and obviously having access to all global inventory through one user interface is quite powerful as well. When it comes to technology partners, I think that level of control and trust is really important, and therefore we prefer partners that are pure technology players that don't make money on media or don't sell media themselves, but purely sell technology on a license fee model. But also we have to recognize that there is not one tool that suits all needs. So there's certain inventory, for example, YouTube, that is only available through certain tools. There's certain type of data, like Amazon data, that's only available through their tool. So as an agency, we have a technology agnostic approach. We work with many technology partners and then have built a technology and reporting layer on top of that to integrate multiple DSPs in one campaign so that we can use the best combination of technology, media partner, and data in a campaign to drive the best results. Over to you.
Thanks, Ollie. It feels a little bit like Eurovision on the handover, so apologies for that, but 10 points to Ollie. Dave, coming to you, and I think there's a couple of questions that come out of what Ollie just talked to. One is, specifically, what's the opportunity and challenge around access to maybe walled-off inventory, and how does that affect a DSP's approach? And also, particularly with the advances we talked about earlier with ads.tech or curated marketplaces was called out in an earlier presentation. Tell me about the approach you're taking in that space as well.
Yeah, I mean, both of the things you mentioned, Simon, are sort of the largest gravitational pull, certainly from the large walled gardens. I'd say for us that leads us, tying it into the partner question, to seek out differentiated supply and data relationships. So how can you go globally and get relationships with retailers and publishers that could feed back into a large FMCG in a way that, you know, we're probably not going to build the world's largest search engine, so you got to find other ways to do that, right? And on the publisher side, I think a tactical thing that's changed the landscape is header bidding. So I think, you know, that'll evolve over time. There'll be different things that happen with the actual technology. But I think the idea that we're moving away from a non-dynamic waterfall on the publisher side, partners that support that vision we're really interested in. And we're really interested in the vision of a higher CPM for lower number of impressions with higher impact is a much better world than the world in which you go and visit, you know, a brand site and then you see the ad of the product you know, looked at for a month later, which is neither efficacious nor particularly good experience. I'd say maybe just one more sort of tacking on that. There's an unexpected bit in here of choosing your client partners, which is who are the people who support the vision that I think, you know, we do, but probably everybody around the table does, which is you're trying to, you know, execute consumer-friendly advertising that is driven to outcomes, not things like clicks. Things, you know, optimizing things like clicks tends to drive this whole thing called fraud. And so you almost make it easier on the rest of your supply chain and partner chain to the extent that you can choose the client and incent your, kind of evangelize your client that outcomes matter. It's harder to gain those things. And I think downstream of that, and as it relates to sort of how do you operate a walled garden, what you try to present is sort of part of the walled garden in ecosystems where you can, but then provide an open alternative that monetizes well for publishers, data partners, and that the advertiser, the agency feels really comfortable they're getting clear transparency kind of value.
I mean, it's really, I agree with you. It feels this year has seen some of that shift away from that scale to scale state, back to the value of content production, the recognition of cost of content production. And I think it's a great point to come to you, Emmanuel, particularly Freeworld's heritage in video, which, let's be clear, is not cheap to produce. How do you select how you partner with buying technologies to be effective? There is just ahead of that also a panel that will follow this around how to sell programmatically, so we'll hear some more commentary from a range of publishers and actors in the space in that panel too, but over to you.
Yeah, so I guess there's two parts to that question. So in terms of who we partner with from a publisher perspective, but as well as who we partner with from a buying perspective. I guess from a buying perspective, we as you would imagine, work with, the largest players within the marketplace for obvious reasons based upon market share. But in addition to that, we also have some other demand side partners that have, you could say, very much new entrants to the space within reason. And to some extent, they do provide, some of our publishers an element of incremental revenue. So it's quite key for us to get to some degree of poor understanding of what offering they have that can complement the users that we promote through the partners that we represent. From a publisher standpoint, I'd go as far as saying, to a degree, every SSP is a market to basically bring on board whales. But alongside doing that, it's quite important that we also fish for goldfish as well, because the whole premise of programmatic is trying to find the correct user at the right time across the correct device. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before in terms of getting a core understanding of where or where we can pinpoint those users across the various media devices in terms of providing the good uplift for the demand partners that we work with. I'd also go as far as saying, in terms of the way we choose some of the partners that we work with from a supply standpoint, it's very much a case of ensuring that their goals as a business are aligned with ours from a technology standpoint. I think that's quite key, especially bearing in mind, we and we'll probably get into this, but we partner with quite a few vendors in terms of caveating elements of fraudulent activity for advertising demand side platforms.
Thanks, guys. Again, I think one of the things we're uncovering is some of the level of complexity. So it's often easy to think this is a turnkey or a quick button solution. Actually, good investment up front, good investment and responsibility for everyone through the chain. It's going to help just drive the ecosystem to be healthier, potentially higher value, less scale, and that's actually potentially a really strong thing. We've got about 5 minutes left on the panel, so if there are any questions from the audience, if you want to start asking those in now, I'm going to try and leave 2 minutes or so to get to questions towards the end, maybe 3. I think the one thing I'd like to call out is also, are there specific considerations people need to make around buying video or buying mobile or mobile in-app, which are very different environments, right, or have specificities. So if anyone wants to offer a quick opinion on that as a topic.
Yeah, I'll just jump in on that question. So I guess from a supply standpoint, our perspective is, it's an interesting time within the industry at the moment, bearing in mind, the majority of users have, you could say, are penetrating mobile devices across mobile web and in-app ahead of desktop. And I think we're very much at a stage where we're trying to evangelize the benefits of utilizing those mediums, as well as trying to educate that the shift in spend should also mirror the shift in usage. And I think one of the key points that always you could say is always raised to us as a supply representative is that it's quite difficult for the buyers to track various KPIs such as viewability across mobile and in-app. So I think like I said, we're now at the crossroads within the industry, and I think there has to be some more something in technology or some more testing. In order to truly understand the benefits of monetizing mobile.
I'm just going to jump to Ollie, and then we'll come back to the room.
I think when it comes to video, we say that obviously advertiser demand is very high, publisher supply is limited, and therefore many publishers tell us we don't have to sell programmatically because we can sell directly. However, I see that especially in video, programmatic can help both sides dramatically, because advertisers want to manage reach across multiple publishers, and that is obviously where programmatic can help us, and that minimizes waste. But also advertisers want to target their audience, and again, that's where programmatic helps to minimize waste. So in the end, we can maximize the value for video if we buy it programmatically. Now, one thing that is quite frustrating for me is also that in video especially, some publishers are not supporting the latest video standards that allow third-party ad verification. So we want to measure viewability, fraud, brand safety through a tool that our clients have chosen. And I think that is something that publishers have to support. In video, I don't see any technical reason not to do so. In mobile, that is still quite difficult because true measurement depends on being integrated into the app, in-app, and that means there needs to be an SDK integration, and that is definitely harder to organize and still an area where the industry hasn't solved the problem.
Thanks, Ollie. So we're running towards the end of the time. We'll just check if there are any questions we're going to address, but I think Dave wanted to make a point as well.
Just a quick one, perhaps provocative. There are a lot of technical implementation details still being worked through, including liquidity of specific markets. I think the objective should be post-channel world. Like, consumers don't live in a channel world anymore. The amount of multi-screen consumption that goes on is fundamentally different than a world in which the conveyance of advertising on one side might be paper and the other side might be the airwaves. Yes, most of the buying processes that still exist and the organizational structures that exist in advertisers and agencies are set up around a channel-specific allocation-specific budget. So my one sort of point here might be the real promise will be when that allocation happens fully dynamically. Yes, the creative creation is very different for different media, but the decisions that get made in the sort of allocation and the optimization of that, I think we're getting close to a world where that gets very fungible across all the different channels.
I think that's even true for sellers too as well, right? So even on the publisher side, there's still some of that siloing, and that change is something that I know a lot of companies are putting a lot of energy in how you address with specialists versus generalists and what the best solution there is. And in most cases, it's a bit of finding the right skin for the business you're within. Marika, do we have any questions? No questions so far. Evelyn, do you have any closing thoughts?
From an advertising perspective, programmatic is a very strong tool to use. It gives you the control, it gives you transparency, you can actually see in real time the efficiency of its impression and exactly who you're targeting. You can get a lot of insights in order to use back to the business, but also to take the right understanding, go into it, your DSPs, SSPs, agency, and influence the industry in order to fix the model or fix the product in order to bring more transparency and more targeting and relevant activities to the advertisers. I think in a few years, actually, the programmatic will not going to only be based on the data, but it will change and will expand to other channels that the personas that we want to go after actually will live and breathe. So there are a lot more to come in, and hopefully the technology will help us with that.
Absolutely. I did an event for the IAB in Dublin a couple of weeks ago where I said, I hope I don't get invited to events in a couple of years. Because you shouldn't want someone to talk about programmatic. We should be post-programmatic by that point, and that's definitely the time. I do want to have a job, but maybe not a job that's defined by programmatic.
The statistic that at the turn of the 19th century, 70% of the world's largest companies had chief electricity officers. When you need a chief electricity officer, you're not ubiquitous in your technology.
So, thank you, everybody. Thanks for the time on this panel. We're going to hand over to Ollie, I think, who's going to introduce the next panel, and we're going to do a tiny bit of room shuffling in the room we're in. So, thank you all for everyone for participating.
Well, thanks a lot for this panel, and I think it's a very good lead over to the How to Sell Programmatically panel, because ultimately, all people in this industry ultimately have to work for the advertisers to achieve their objectives. And so what Pavlina said, I think, should be the guiding light for the discussion going forward. How can we help advertisers to achieve their objectives, hit their ROI goals, get the transparency and the insights that they want? And I'm very happy to have a great panel here with David Goddard, that you have heard earlier this morning, programmatic trading at the BBC Worldwide. We then have Bill Krumperman, Advertising Platform Senior Business Advisor at Schibsted. So they are representing the publishers. And then we have two people representing the technology side with Luke Fenney, VP Publisher Development at Index Exchange, and Alex Mervyn, Vice President International at SpotX. And I would want to start with Bill. And Bill, can you please explain to us first a little bit about Schibsted, because you have a lot of client-facing, consumer-facing brands that not everyone might know how big Schibsted is. But then tell us, what is Schibsted's approach to programmatic versus selling directly, and how have you built your programmatic offering?
Sure. Can you hear me as I'm dialing in?
Yep. Yes, wonderful.
Great. So Schibsted is a global company. It was founded in Norway as newspapers, and then, you know, as through a digital transformation, we've expanded across the globe. I think we're in 25 or 26 countries, many sites. Most of the countries that we're in, we have a business with marketplaces, so that would be verticals regarding verticals from cars or real estate marketplaces, so classified ads or classified sites. So I work from Barcelona, and I work in our advertising platform team. And what we do is we design and we execute on our strategy for ad tech, and yeah, and basically I'm advising on regarding the features, how to sell advertising through our ad platform to all the different countries. I started out in Schibsted 7 years ago in Schibsted Spain, and came up through the ranks through ad ops to be head of programmatic for Schibsted Spain, and was given the opportunity to, back in the day when it was called RTB, to be the RTB project manager, so whatever that was at that time, and basically was given the responsibility to build out our own private marketplace for the Schibsted Spain sites, and roll out the product, and then train the sales team. And once I did that, yeah, I came over to the central team, helping do the same thing in other markets. So yeah, that's Schibsted, and yeah.
How do you organize your media sales across programmatic and direct sales?
Sure. So programmatic is very much it came from its own little sales channel or business unit to being, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, sometimes it will vary from market to market, but I think that most people in Schibsted would agree that it's becoming very much just a methodology or a method of buying media. So in an ideal case, our salespeople will be able to consult the client that needs to buy media on our sites with different objectives. That could be performance or branding or whatever it may be, with an insertion order. Or we can also advise them and connect them through programmatic pipes. So the goal is that the salespeople have programmatic as another way to offer a great service towards the client, and the salespeople need to understand what that means. That means that the client will be bidding on their inventory or on our inventory, and we might not meet. It might not be a specific impression goal or pricing goal, but I mean we have all the tools that can basically deliver for the client.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think we would now love to hear from David. So, Schibsted, you have a lot of local sites, global sites to one side to a global audience. How do you integrate programmatic, and what's your strategy?
Thank you very much, Oliver. So, for those who didn't hear me speaking slightly earlier today, just give a brief introduction. I'm David Goddard, Global Head of Programmatic Trading at BBC Advertising, which is a division of BBC Worldwide that monetizes the global digital portfolio of the BBC, returning value back to the BBC. And on a great question. So, we initially started or had a look at how we wanted to step into programmatic. There are many options, as if you looked at how to sell or using kind of the road programmatic infographic available on IAB Hub, there are many solutions you can take, externally outsource or take control. But we opted to take control and set up a programmatic solution. So we had control of the text selection to make sure that it adheres to certain brand safety and data protection requirements that we needed the platforms to deliver. And what we did when stepping into programmatic is we quickly realised that many aspects of digital advertising is automated by programmatic technology. But the one thing that isn't is inventory discovery. And what I mean by that is, how do you encourage a buyer in a market in APAC or Europe or even Latin America to know that the BBC is right for their campaign? So this is the one thing, because open auction or programmatic indirect is driven by algorithms and people's perceived value of that inventory. But what we really wanted to do was grow programmatic direct. It's high yielding, it tends to have a more efficient value chain in programmatic direct, and it was a way that we could make the BBC's context prove valuable to advertisers out there. And to do that, we needed voices in the market and utilise our global sales team, which is dotted across multiple markets across the globe, as our inventory discovery tool. Because they already understand the BBC's buyer, and we needed them to understand programmatic to convey the same message. They just say programmatic is one mechanism that you can engage with the BBC's inventory. So, as the global sales force was the answer, we realised that we needed to educate them. So, to do that, first and foremost, we rolled out a global training program that has been done to every delivered to every salesperson across the globe now, to bring them up to speed with programmatic. And how to sell, how to account manage, what platforms to utilise, what solution, whether it's programmatic guaranteed or private auction, was right for the buyer's campaign, and deliver this. But it doesn't mean that we've done away with programmatic specialists, otherwise I wouldn't be here speaking to you now, because these are required too, to deliver the training, but also understand key trends, patterns within the organisation or the specific markets where we're trading, and to execute the campaigns that are brought in the door by the now direct sales team. So we've doubled that across the globe, and what we've actually effectively achieved is avoiding channel conflict between direct reservation campaigns and programmatic, thus delivering programmatic growth without barriers.
Great, thanks a lot. And over to Luke. How are you guys supporting publishers to sell programmatically and advertisers and agencies to buy their inventory?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if we look at the biggest challenge for publishers over the last 5 or so years when it comes to programmatic, obviously most publishers had their traditional direct sales business and were potentially working with ad networks in the days of remnant monetization, but programmatic has brought a lot more of a premium spend to market. So one of the biggest challenges for publishers has really been, who do I allocate a particular impression to? That could be a question of do I allocate an impression to direct sales as opposed to programmatic? And I guess furthermore, if you do make that decision to allocate an impression to a programmatic channel, which SSP or exchange should actually be sending this impression to? I think what we're seeing is that creates a lot of complexities for publishers in maintaining what I would call old school waterfalls and maintaining passbacks. And essentially, we're traditionally forced a publisher to make a decision on when to allocate an impression without having all of the information, and they're typically making those decisions based on historical information, whether that's average CPM that a partner has provided over a historical period of time, or fill rate, etc. So I think one of the things that we at Index Exchange, and I guess others are doing at the moment, which is really helping publishers to sell better, is through the rise of header bidding. And header bidding really eliminates a lot of those challenges that have existed around allocation of inventory. So today, a publisher can query one or more programmatic monetization partners in parallel and effectively take that real-time data, a price, and whether or not that partner wants to monetize the impression. And the ad server is now becoming the final decision maker again. So we've effectively got real-time or smart allocation today. We've moved away from the waterfall. I think if you look at 3 years ago what a head of programmatic did as a publisher, quite often it was maintain a waterfall, managing passbacks between partners, and effectively a big part of their job was inventory allocation. Took up a huge amount of time and detracted away from focusing on actually selling the inventory. So I think today, with the elimination of the waterfall, elimination of passbacks, we're now giving publishers the ability to focus on selling. So effectively, taking less of their time up with the administrative side of managing the pipes and spending more time on focusing on the value that they can offer the buyers.
Great. Luke, and now over to Alex, where we have heard this morning already that video is one of the most exciting areas of programmatic. So is what Luke said different in the video space? And maybe a small provocation, do you need a specialist player for that?
Thank you, Ollie, for the fantastic introduction and what great discussion so far. I'm responsible for SpotX's business outside of the U.S., and we've built our business on the belief that video has specific technical and commercial challenges which don't exist in display. And I think if we take a few steps back for video publishers, so if you're a multi-channel network that has traditionally published your content only on YouTube, or if you're a broadcaster who is experimenting with delivering your content over the internet or OTT, what the American technology companies have done, so Google and Facebook, is they've decoupled audience from context. And now independent publishers are in a position where the pitch used to be about the value of the context, the brand, the history, in order to get onto a media plan and achieve allocation from the agency. And the technology companies have just split that out and enabled brands and clients to cherry pick their audiences, which really hurts the publisher's ability to realize value on their inventory. And we think that the best way to mitigate that is to provide publishers with a unified ad serving and supply side platform stack. Not to have DSP plus a bunch of SSPs, but to have one modern ad server that can handle mediation both across direct sales and indirect. That way you remove the waterfalling challenges, the passback challenges, and you can actually have a unified auction, and you can ensure that every possible media opportunity is being sold to the highest bidder.
Great. You've mentioned, look at both have mentioned unified auction and integrated sales. I think that was the common theme. And so this discussion about header bidding which was raised already. I would love to get everyone a quick statement to say, is header bidding the future, or is header bidding just an interim solution for that unified sales process across direct sales and programmatic sales? Let's start with David.
Thank you for coming to me first. I'll just leave a statement on our point of view of header bidding. I think valid points earlier on around managing the waterfall was painful for many publishers, and we do need a solution that brings true efficiency to yield management across direct reservations and programmatic, again, delivering the right impression to the user who's going to pay the greatest value, but while also being able to deliver the commitments you've already committed to in a direct reservation world or automatic guaranteed deals. Header bidding was one solution, and it worked for many publishers, but looking at it from a BBC perspective, and some other publishers did, it wasn't right for us at the time. Having a auction occurring on a user's browser wasn't that appealing to us, but also knowing that server-to-server solutions were only around the corner. Yes, it was 2 years away when header bidding was truly launched, but they were still around the corner. We didn't want to spend huge amounts of time putting something in and then changing it only a year later. Because if we do something, we want to do it right as the BBC. So we've actually opted not to step into header bidding, Oliver, and actually look at server solutions out there, exchange bidding dynamic allocation being one of them, and there are other solutions that are being assessed in the pipeline at the moment to deliver what is a unified auction and delivering the solution that Luke mentioned earlier that all publishers want, is getting the maximum amount of value out of an individual impression at a time, and making sure that we can deliver holistic yield management right across our ad stack or digital portfolio.
I would love to jump in and just to add on to that. 5 years ago, we all thought that RTB was this amazing thing, and 5 years later, no one says the word. And I think that in 5 years from now, header bidding will be an amazing thing, and I don't think any of us will use the term for it, because all header bidding does is make demand price aware in a downstream auction. And I do think that's the future. I think that having complete transparency into the auction dynamics is irrevocably where we're going. I think that'll benefit everybody in the value chain. The current implementation is as immature as the RTB connections were 5 years ago, and I agree it's got to go server side. We cannot become compliant with new privacy legislation like GDPR and EPR with all the client-side calls that occur within header bidding today. I think it becomes untenable for a publisher to enforce downstream data compliance. So that's just one example. Battery time and user experience on mobile. But yeah, I think it is the future. We'll just call it something different.
Right. I don't know, Alex or Bill, if you want to add, but there seems to be consensus that it's about a unified sales process and a unified technology to allow direct sales and programmatic to compete for the inventory. If not, just jump in.
Yes. So what I've seen by working with different sites, I've heard both arguments, people that aren't really a fan of header bidding for different reasons, and then others that see that header bidding works for them. Me personally, I think I'm a fan of the unified auction. I see header bidding as an implementation, as a means to the end. I mean, that's Bill Krumperman saying that. It's not Shipstead saying this is our stance, but this is how I see it as what from my experience in the business. So, but I think there's also a really important point that needs for any site that's thinking about working with header bidding is, and we talked about this before between us on the panel, is that the importance of this publisher to have a very strong sense of commercial data. That means on all the platforms, all the sell-side platforms that they're working with, if they're within the waterfall or with their header bidding or wherever, I think a good way to start is to understand the advertisers that are buying on inventory, and the buyers. So if you can you can analyze that across the different sell-side platforms, then the implementation becomes irrelevant almost. I mean, as long as you're able to create, like David said, holistic yield, and really leverage all of the demand that's looking for your site, that in itself is a huge task at hand. So something that can help you do that, for me, is useful.
Great. And I don't know if Alex wants to add something. Otherwise, my next question would be.
Yeah, so Oliver, that was actually Alex that was just talking a little bit earlier here in London, as Luke's speaking now. So I think with regards to header bidding, we're going through an evolution, and it is definitely not the end state. I think the reason why header bidding has come about, I guess, has really been influenced by the fact that Google and many other ad servers really didn't, for many years, allow publishers to conduct a true unified auction. If those decisions by Google and others have been different in 2012, 2013, the concept of header bidding or the fact that we're having this discussion today might not actually exist. Google's exchange bidding program is a reaction to header bidding actually coming around. So if that had happened the other way around, we could be having a very different decision now. So I think for publishers, it's really all about choice, and ultimately everything will go server-side. I mean, that's what real-time bidding was when it launched in 2009, 2010. And I guess it's interesting to see that we've come back full circle, back to client-side integrations. But I think the reality today is that publishers still make more money from client-side header bidding integrations than server-side integrations. It is absolutely possible to do both in parallel, and many publishers are doing both a client-side header bidding or a traditional header bidding integration in parallel with a server-side solution such as exchange bidding, and we encourage that as well. I think today that is a strategy that allows the publisher to maximise their revenue. Ultimately, we do need to get everything back server-side. It is going to take some time though. We have problems in the industry around identity, and GDPR is potentially going to, and the e-privacy regulation is going to complicate this even further. But purely with cookie IDs, we know as an industry that cookie IDs are not sufficient to really facilitate programmatic at its maximum. So there's obviously a number of initiatives in the industry at the moment to address identity. I think once some of those initiatives come to fruition, and there are common identifiers between platforms in the market, we'll be actually able to have true server-side solutions in place. And I guess to Alex's point earlier, I don't think we will use the term header bidding in 2, 3, 5 years from now, because it probably won't exist in its current form. But we are going through an evolution where today, for a publisher, for most publishers, it is a strategy that makes sense in maximising revenue.
Brilliant. And with all that talk about technology, the final question, in 1 minute each, please. Will that change the role of people? Will we still need media sales people? And what will be their future?
I'll start. Yes, absolutely. This is an art, not a science. We're going to automate the reporting. We're going to automate I think the means of measuring success, but what is the narrative? What is the emotional connection that your property can create with a consumer is a story that can never be automated. And I think that the media seller may become more of a storyteller. I think the skill set might change, but they're going to be more important than ever.
Yes, media salespeople will exist in some form. I think the concept of real-time bidding has created a lot of efficiencies for both buyers and sellers. As a publisher, you could have no people and take advantage of spend from thousands of brands around the world without really lifting or without having a media salesperson in place. But you are a little bit at the mercy of the algorithms, which for some publishers may be sufficient. For publishers that don't really have content or media that can really differentiate, that may be sufficient. But for premium publishers, it's absolutely essential to be able to tell that story, explain the context of the inventory, the audience, and therefore you need those people. I just think their roles are going to continue to evolve over time.
Yeah, I echo everything that's been said before. Programmatic, again, is just a mechanism of trading digital, and like we were saying, with such as head of bidding and RTB not been spoken about or won't be spoken about in the future, programmatic will just be the execution of trading digital. And still, we need our inventory to be discoverable, and that's the result of a sales team. Understanding of advertisers or agencies' key requirements and matching them, because people are at the heart of automation, and that's the future. Once we fix all the tech and it works seamlessly, they're going to be the growth.
Bill, final word?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everybody. I think that the salespeople on the sell side are really the face, and they bring the most value. I mean, yes, there's tons of smart and really gifted people working on the tech side, but the salespeople, if they're good, like I think it was Alex saying, if they're good at the storytelling part and they can add value to that conversation, then that's extremely important for publishers. So I agree with everybody there.
Wonderful. Well, then, thanks a lot for this panel. And I can summarize. We will go for holistic integrated sales across direct sales and programmatic sales. And programmatic will be just a pipe to sell. And people are still the most important, which is also reflected by the number of people that are participating in this virtual programmatic day. We're now coming to the close for the morning session. I just want to summarize what we have heard and talked about this morning. We have seen that there's massive growth of programmatic to 8.1 billion spent last year. 50% of the market is traded programmatically. The biggest growth comes from video, which has been growing 155%, and mobile. We then have heard from the attitudes to programmatic that efficiency is really important, but more important is to connect to the audience. David has also talked about the lean principles, which essentially means as an industry, we have to be very, very cautious which type of ads we put in front of consumers so that we don't frustrate them and encourage them to ad block. And that means cutting out some of those ads that are working very well in the short-term picture to sustain the long-term business. Data is fraud and brand safety are issues we have to address. Data is a big opportunity for publishers and for advertisers, and essentially taking control is one of the themes that is coming up over and over again, which was very much emphasized by Ryan in his discussion about transparency. And transparency comes in these two dimensions. One is to understand what are we buying and what is the quality of what we're getting. So discussions about fraud, about viewability, about the impact of our ads. And the other transparency about cost and who is taking a cut in the value chain. My hope is that that part of transparency discussion is not mainly based around, I just want it cheaper, but understanding the real value that is created and then making sure that that value is paid for appropriately. But in the end, transparency is about understanding what's going on and asking the right question, and the IAB paper can help here. On the buy side, we came to the conclusion that ultimately the focus of all of our effort needs to be to help advertisers to drive higher ROI and get closer to their consumers. That is sometimes forgotten in all these very technical discussions. In the end, all we are here to do is help advertisers to be more successful and consumers to get more relevant advertising, which the sell side discussion has shown is by combining all buying routes and making it easier, focusing on the quality and telling the story about the quality and the media product that you're actually selling, to allow publishers to maximize their yield or manage it holistically, but then also to allow advertisers to buy the right inventory to reach their audience. And header bidding is just an interim solution maybe, but it allowed publishers to try out new ways of working, especially when they are on the Google stack, to try out alternative solutions without throwing out their current partner. So this was the morning session of the Virtual Programmatic Day. Thanks a lot for joining. We will come back at 1:45 CAT or 12:45 London time or Portugal time. And the second half of the day will focus on very interesting questions as well. How to use data effectively, how to maximize the mobile opportunity, and then going into a discussion, what is the future for programmatic in Europe? So I hope we will all see you back and some more people to join for the afternoon session. And please be active like you were earlier this morning in asking questions. This works really well, and we hope to make it a very interactive session. Thanks a lot and have a good lunchtime.